Welcome back to this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. Today I'm joined by John Flanagan, CEO of CareerSource Tampa Bay. CareerSource is one of those places where the government and private business come together in a way that supports our community. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Cords. I appreciate the time and I appreciate you having me here.
So this is a really important mission that you are charged with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really supports our community, though, when it's working well.
It sure does. When we live by kind of three simple words that everything we do revolves around connecting talent to opportunity. And that, talent means many different things and opportunity means many different things. And what's nice about it is we serve, tens of thousands of people a year, whether it's from the business community looking to, onboard talent that they need, which is in huge demand right now, particularly in an area like Tampa, or from the job seeker side. If it's placement into employment right away, or if it's training or upskilling that job seeker wants to do because they're maybe either making a career change or getting back into the labor force after some time out, or just, again, some of the normal transition that you see as part of the working world. So it's a big mission. We love doing what we're doing, and we can understand and see the impact it has on the community when we do it well.
So how has your organization been impacted by the current job market? I know in the years past, you've had people that have been really, really motivated to find that perfect job, and they've, had, a pretty challenging time finding great jobs. And now it seems like it's completely flipped, where you have great people that are out there bouncing all over the place.
Absolutely. It is. So I kind of equate this, if you're a job seeker, it's like if you're looking to buy a house, it's like a buyer's market right now.
Yeah.
If you're a job seeker. At any one time in the United States, there's about 11 million open jobs. And then if you look at traditional statistics you see from the U.S. government through like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's about 7 million people looking. So there's a massive gap in between opportunity and talent. So if you're on the talent side, you can kind of name your price now, right? It's kind of the opposite of what the housing market is right now. So it's wonderful from that standpoint. So that's when you see a labor market that's kind of contracted and tight like this, you see wage growth and you see better opportunities for job seekers. And it was going like gangbusters, quite frankly, all throughout 2019, and then COVID hits, and it certainly put a huge pause in that. The state of Florida, for whatever reason, picked up, pretty well in regards to getting people back to work. So the state did a really good job of that. You continue to see the wage growth, but what's changing that now is you're starting to see inflation. So, for 2019 and 20 and a good part of 21, wage growth outpaced inflation. This last 6 months, it's completely flipped. So you've got some interesting things there. But, Tampa, particularly Tampa, if you're an employer, it's a great time to find talent. And quite frankly, if you're an employer that's looking to relocate, Tampa's a pretty hot market. Right now.
Check us out.
Totally. It's fantastic. It's a clear difference from other parts of the country. And it's a benefit to our job seekers right now. Because again, like I said, great time to be looking for a job because you can kind of name your price.
And so at CareerSource, you guys work within a couple of domains, right? So you've got onboarding talent, you've got training talent to make it even more talented.
That's right. So we work with an employer holistically from everywhere. From we'll help an employer post a job. We'll screen candidates. We'll even participate in the front on the front end of the interview process, and help them onboard the talent that they need. And if it's not a perfect match, we're able to offer some cost offsets to employers. We call it our OJT program, or on-the-job training program, where we identify some of the skills that job seeker needs to learn in order to be considered proficient by the employer. And we help offset some of the cost of that. And we do that, and we'll cover up to 50 to 75% of the wage for up to a period of 6 months. Because we want to ensure not just we get...
That's incredible, by the way.
It's fantastic. And what we found is when we do that, retention really, there's a huge difference in retention, because we're not just judged as an organization on our effectiveness by putting people or helping people get into work. It's what are they doing a year later after they exit the program. We want to make sure that they're still employed, because that's how we're judged. it's one thing if you're trying to solve some issues related to your income bracket to get a job. It's a whole nother matter if a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, you still have that job. So that's really where the shift happens and the economic security really starts to begin. So we take that very seriously. We want to make sure that we want to try to guarantee success for continued employment.
I mean, that's one thing that when I'm thinking about economic security, that's one of the like hidden secret weapons of economic security are things like 401ks.
Absolutely.
And so if you stay in one job for multiple years and you get 401k with matching, with that tax benefit, if the market's doing at least flat, you're going to see massive amount of savings that are going to benefit you dramatically later on in life.
Totally agree. And the thing, and from, being a full-time employee, being covered under a healthcare plan for you and your family. I mean, these are things that, when people have difficulties financially, it's usually around things like costs related to healthcare. If they don't have adequate
catastrophic.
So when we try to work with employers, we want to make sure that, we help people get into employment that covers all these things. We want it holistic because when you do that, the chance of retention is much greater. And again, it's a really important part of what we do is making sure that the folks we work with are thriving a year or 2 years down the road. And it's not just them. The employer is going to thrive as well because they've got a good, solid, dependable, reliable team member that's going to help them, produce and meet their goals and objectives too.
Yeah, and so you've been the CEO of CareerSource for around 2 years now?
A little over 3. So I came on January 22nd, 2019 was my first day on the job. And we as an organization were focused on some things a little bit differently prior to my arrival. And really what we wanted to do was make a bigger and a different impact to the region. So, being more of a strategic entity and fostering and growing partnerships with employers, with other community partners, with the education community, all of these buckets need to be intertwined to make sure that we're developing, quite frankly, a world-class talent pipeline. Because once we do that, employers just are going to start to come flooding in more than they are now because they're going to identify and recognize, hey, there's really good talent, not just good talent in Tampa Bay. They've got a structure and a system that's going to continue to churn it out year over year. So we'll be comfortable here. And it's better than where we are now. So we're going to come here and relocate.
Right.
Great for them. Great for the residents of Tampa.
And just in all transparency, I mean, you came in during a difficult time for the world and for your organization.
Yeah.
I mean, and you've done an incredible job cleaning a lot of things up.
Yeah, so we were we were in the midst of a state and federal performance audit that unearthed some things that weren't too great, and that was part of my mission as in my role was to one get our hands around that and get that managed, but also how do we do things differently? Bring some best practices or bring some practices from other parts of the country that seem to work, particularly in areas like I came from Philadelphia before I came down here. I was doing the same job up in the city and just brought some different ideas down. It's how do we work with partners to better serve more job seekers? And there's some pretty easy things we were able to do to really increase our capacity.
So what's your ideal engagement with a company or organization in town look like?
It's a great question. So our ideal is finding opportunities for talent that's on a number of things. Number one, that's looking to maybe make a change in their career path. That's going to help an employer find new ways to grow and foster talent, and make sure that and make sure that employer, if it relates in better diversity, equity, and inclusion for that employer, it's a huge win, because part of our job at CareerSource and some of the funding that we get really is dedicated for those people that we consider the hardest to serve. So it's your opportunity youth or your out of school youth. It could be people returning citizens from incarceration, people that have been out of the labor force for an extended period of time. we're not going to thrive as a community until we provide enough opportunity for some of these priority populations that we work with to have, and I'm not talking about, equality of outcome. I'm talking about equality of opportunity to make sure that everybody has, the same, every talented person in this region has the same access to opportunity.
Especially if it's people who've paid their debts.
100%.
Tried to turn their lives around,
Couldn't agree more. And people don't often think about that. But, when that happens, if you make a mistake in your life and to the point where you have to, be, confined or incarcerated, the whole point is eventually you're going to repay your debt. They've done that. So let's help them, because again, it's not just important for them. It's important for our economy. And I'll just kind of throw out an interesting piece of data here. The United States is an aging population. Quite frankly, the world, industrialized nations are aging. Our birth rate, our reproduction rate has dropped below 2.1 for the last 30 years. Can't even keep up with the demand that's related to how many jobs are going to be created. And immigration isn't really going to solve it. So, we have to help the employer community, or we have to be a resource to the employer community to hyper-focus them on talent pools where they don't traditionally look, because quite frankly, it's a numbers game at this point. They're going to need to look in some places where they haven't looked before if they want to continue producing or being an employer. It's just, it's the reality of the world that we live in right now. I don't think there's more than one or two industrialized nations that have a birth rate that is at that 2.1 that can manage how their economy is going to grow, and the economy is changing. You're getting different priority jobs and different priority sectors, particularly with the advent of clean energy and things like that. How we're trying to become a greener workplace. Those are different and unique skill sets that we're going to have to train all of our workforce on, certainly. But the contingent of the labor force that's not yet in employment, they're going to need that too.
Well, things are looking up, especially if you're somebody out there, a candidate for employment, to go out there and find a job. Are there places that these types of public-private groups like CareerSource specialize? Like, we're particularly good at healthcare. We're particularly good at, some other industry.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And what we try to do is, we focus not so much on a particular industry. There's other industries that, by the nature of what we do, we work with a little bit more, particularly manufacturing, hospitality, and tourism, healthcare to an extent. We're starting to work a lot more, and we're having a lot of success with the financial services industry, particularly through a program we call Tampa Bay Summer Hires. It's a large-scale job development program for our 16 to 24-year-old population. When you look at
so the financial sector, so they would get jobs at banks.
So they would, if it's not a job at a bank, they would get a career exploration experience or opportunity in a financial system or a bank. They may not be an employee of the bank, but they might go through a 6-week career exploration program, to which we'll pay them $1,200 or $1,500 for learning. So their time is well spent. Nothing's going to engage a young person a little more into learning about something than to put a little money in their pocket.
I think people would be shocked to know that you could get paid to go to a boot camp to learn how to do a job.
It's great. It's fantastic. And I don't want to miss my chance to give a plug to to Hillsborough County, particularly the Board of County Commissioners. They're a fantastic partner. So when I come with an idea, they're typically the first partner I go to, because they want to make, the commissioners want to make an impact.
Yeah, of course.
So they've helped us with our Tampa Bay Summer Hires program, something we call the ACE program, which is Apprenticeship to Career Expansion. It's really more of a pre-apprenticeship program, but we identify and work with 18 to 25-year-olds that are currently unemployed or meet income restrictions, to where we don't just pay for them to be on the work site. We also pay for their education or their short-term training. So while they're getting their certification, they're on site with an employer learning about that job a couple days a week, and then a couple days a week they're in the classroom getting that skill and certification. So when they're done with that, they transition from being a part-time employee to a full-time employee.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'll just give Commissioner Gwen Myers is the person we work with the most right now. She is on our board. She is our second vice chair of our board. She's a wonderful partner. The county has been a fantastic partner. They really have embraced what we've been trying to do, and they've been a partner in this all along.
Well, it sounds like that's a place where government's really working like it's supposed to.
I couldn't agree more.
One of the things that I've noticed over the last few years, we, as an agency, we work a lot with home service companies, and they are dying for more techs. And that's one of the best jobs. Like, there are some really amazing jobs out there you don't have to go to college for.
Yeah. Oh, so when you look at, the return on investment of a four-year education right now, right. Maybe it's not what it once was. And with the world becoming a little bit more technical in everything across industries, the ability to get a short-term credential or some short-term training and walk into the labor force at a competitive wage is a real selling point for us, particularly when we're talking about people that are maybe changing industries. Maybe they were working in. We saw this a lot with COVID for people shifting from the hospitality and tourism industry because it was just there was no avenue for months. It was shut down.
Like, how do you put groceries on the table when there's no work?
Exactly. Right. And, pandemic unemployment and all that, it's going to end sometime. So, COVID changed some things forever that will probably never be the same from a workforce perspective. So, getting some folks from one industry into another, you can only do that through short-term training. You can't really, it's not a 2-year or a 4-year solution because, like you said, how are you going to put food on the table? Not
to mention, the people who need to put food on the table need to get this training over and done with quick so Correct. We can get back to earning money.
Absolutely. And it's been great. We were able to use some CARES dollars for that. We got a pretty big, we got about $15 million from the county. We put, 3,000 people either in training and education or in employment. 85% of those people to this day are continually employed. So, these were all folks that were disconnected due to COVID. The county had a great solution working with the local workforce board and CareerSource Tampa Bay and getting people rapidly reemployed or rapidly retrained. I think that's kind of the nature of the business that we're going to be in, particularly on the talent onboarding side. And, we can do the same thing with organizations, employers, and companies. They need upskilling for the workforce they have now. We approach that too. We help them. We help employers upskill their current labor force.
Upskill.
Yep, upskill. Yeah. So it's again, we want to be a holistic solution for our employer community.
So, based off what you're telling me, every single employer ought to at least get a conversation with you guys.
Yes, would be fantastic, and we would welcome it. Now, and the reality is there's 70 some odd thousand payrolled entities in Hillsborough County. I don't think we'd be able to work with them all, but we certainly want to help people that, particularly again, we really kind of try to focus on the small business community because that's important to us. It's 90% of your companies in this county anyway. So we want to make sure that we're using our resources to help small employers onboard and upskill.
Well, one of the things that stuck with me not long ago, I was at a presentation and I saw this quadrant and it talked about people who were motivated and skilled. And so it was showing that there are groups of people who are motivated, and highly skilled. And those are the people where money isn't always the answer. They're looking for more skills. They're looking for training. They're looking to be challenged. And if you're a small business, you don't always have the revenues
That's right.
or the time
That's right.
to train somebody.
Yeah, correct. And again, that's where we want to help.
Okay.
So if there is, if there is an employer that's listening to this right now, that's kind of living the situation that you're talking about, give us a call, reach out to us. We'll be able to help, and we want to help.
Online training is really big these days.
It is.
Do you guys work with online training, or does it have to be skills training on site? Are there any criteria that we would want to know about as employers?
So as long as they meet, some of our base criteria we call it through our eligible training provider list.
Okay.
We have thousands of providers, and it doesn't have to be on site. It can be
Gotcha.
It can be remote. It can be virtual. It doesn't always have to be in a classroom setting. the state of Florida has made some changes to that post-COVID.
Yeah, you would think that would probably make a lot of logical sense after
Yeah,
COVID, right?
Yeah, and they did it pretty quickly, so it's good. And
Kudos.
It's helped us. It's helped our organization help our customers.
Yeah, well, we're definitely lucky to live here. I mean, we've got everything except the mountains.
Yeah.
We've got all these industries, all these great things to do here. It's a great place to live and work and raise a family.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about you. So John, you're obviously passionate about what you're doing. You've got an interesting background in how you got into this, all the way back to your early childhood.
Sure. Yeah. So, I didn't really put it together until I was a little bit older and out of college. But, my years from between ages, 6 till I was, getting ready to graduate high school really kind of helped me gravitate to this work without even knowing it at the point. Was three sisters and a brother, big family, lost our father unexpectedly at an early age. Understood the value of a support system through my brothers and sisters, and my mom were really close. And one of the things that, my mom had to work, most of her life, 2 jobs. So what did we do after school? I went to the Boys and Girls Club, our local Boys and Girls Club in Erie, PA. And, I met, and still to this day, his name's Al Messina. He was the director when I was there, was probably the closest thing to a father figure or a male role model my brother and I had. So understood it's not just family as a support structure, but it's community. I understood that because it helped me grow into the person I am, but it didn't really click with me until I was almost 30 years old. I was working in the private sector in healthcare, was a project developer. I knew fairly soon into that job, it's not what I wanted to do with my life. It was fine, but I kind of wanted something that had a little bit more of an impact.
It's a job.
It's a job, exactly. Paid the bills for a while. Ran into my old high school principal when I was living in Pittsburgh at the time. Went up to my hometown of Erie, PA. Was out to dinner with my then fiance, now wife. And ran into my old high school principal, and he was a board member. I was actually the chair of the board at this organization called the International Institute of Erie. It was a refugee resettlement and immigration services agency, and they had just had a changeover in leadership. Mr. Grody told me about it and asked me if I wanted to apply, and I said, well, it's kind of different from what I'm doing now. I'm not sure. Took the interview, and then really as I started talking to the board and got to meet some of the staff, and what was really impactful, got to meet some of the people that we assist in their resettlement process.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, I got to get this job. I want this job really bad. And to see how, at the end of the day, what it really did for me is not just brought me back to really what I wanted to do, which was help communities grow and thrive in a different way. It taught me the value of perspective. As bad as you think, or as difficult as you think your life may be, there's always somebody who would give everything they had to be in your shoes, and you'd never hear them complain about it, and they take off like a rocket ship. So I've really started, at that point in my life, I really started to develop what I call a perspective, and really understand that, look at people who have persevered through much more difficult circumstances than you, and understand that your place in the world isn't as bad, and think about your part in helping them get there. And what really attracted me most was, it's the second part of that conversation. It's the people. It's the groups of people that we helped resettle. Came in as lawyers, doctors, engineers, and it's difficult to be an engineer in Iraq or in Burundi or in sub-Saharan Africa and come and do that same job in the United States without retraining or recertification. So you come over, resettle. Our government is great, but they give you about 6 months to be self-sufficient before they'll take a refugee family and say it's time to go out on your own. To see the work ethic and the complete drop of any type of what's the word I'm looking for? Concept of what job you may have, and understand that you're here. You got a second chance at life, and you're going to do whatever you can to take care of your family. It just was profound to me.
Yeah.
And I saw the change it made, not just in
And that's the
people that we
American dream,
served.
right?
Absolutely.
That's
I
the
got to see
legend of
it
the American dream.
every day. And many of the people that when I started in 2006, I'm good friends with to this day. So many people that through hard work and nothing else have become incredibly fulfilled and successful people and the key indicator is they all give back to their community, whether it's the city of Erie, their neighborhood, their own specific community. It just struck with me, and I knew that I wanted to do something like this for the rest of my life. And I just saw a difference in the value of work. It was even different to me than what I saw in the eyes of some of the people that we helped, resettle in this country. It meant something different to them, and I wanted it to mean to me what it meant to them. So I knew this was kind of the path, that I was going to go on. And I'm a big believer in the phrase, there's no better social program in the world than a job.
Yeah.
Because there really isn't.
Really isn't.
So I try to, everything I've done since pretty much that probably, 2-month period has I've wanted to do something that helped me fulfill that.
There's an incredible amount of dignity that you get
amazing.
when people can take care of themselves
and
their families.
Yeah, it changes you.
There's like grace.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it gives you grace, not just for yourself, but for other people as well. And I think that's important. That's something that, even in today's day and age, we have to give people grace.
Yeah. One of the things you just mentioned was you're talking about like engineers coming from Burundi. I saw a statistic not long ago that showed that the group of immigrants that legally immigrated that are the most successful these days in America are Nigerians.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing to me, and it was measured by average income level, all of the KPIs that you would normally expect. And I was just blown away by that because it seems like some of the most productive American immigrants have come from some of the most challenged places in all of the world.
We talked about, we talked about it a little before. It's kind of like, it really is the personification of the American dream. Not just to us, but think about what that means to the people that get to come here. That get, particularly if you're in a circumstance where you're identified as a refugee and have to come to a new country that initially you may not want to come to. A lot of people don't want to leave their homeland, but they leave.
It would be incredibly hard.
Can you imagine? I couldn't imagine.
Can't imagine it.
I would try to think of myself having to leave my home and go to a land where I don't know the customs, I don't know the language.
I mean, you may have to leave because of war, or you may have to leave for God knows what.
You're a refugee either by fear of religious persecution, war, environmental calamity. You're not leaving because you want to. Right?
Yeah,
you're leaving for self-preservation. So it's difficult for me. I can't speak to anybody else, but I'll speak for me. It's difficult for me to even conceptualize that because, my father passed away when I was 6. But I was always incredibly secure. I had a mother who loved me. I had a very strong family. We lived in a great community. And I didn't have to leave. I could stay where I want and I could grow and flourish. But you've got a lot of people that didn't have that came to a land that they didn't know. And like I said, by their own effort and determination, have changed the lives of them and countless others. So to me, I'll just always hold that in really high regard.
Yeah, one of my friends was an orphan from Cuba and was adopted by a mother who had nothing, but she loved him so much, and he's become one of the most successful people in town.
That's great.
And employs many, many people, does a great job, owns an amazing construction company. Yeah. And he's always on boards of nonprofits and everything. It's incredible. He's one of the people I have the most respect for in the world.
That's great.
What can we do? Is there anything we can do to give some of our population more of your perspective? Help them understand how the opportunities they have?
Yeah, and I think you're starting to see that now, Cords, honestly, from the employer side and from the job seeker side. If I'm ever in front of the media, I always get a question or two when labor market information or labor statistics are published. I mean, I always talk about, the need as an employer to fish in a different pond or to cast your net in a different area. than you typically do, because you're gonna have no choice, because human capital is what it is. So you're gonna have to look in different places, and at different populations. And what you'll find is a pleasant surprise, because there's so much talent that you unearth that you never knew existed there. And that's the importance of it. It's not just,
So give me an example.
So, our skilled trades and construction industry with returning citizens from incarceration, you learn a lot when you're confined. You have the ability to self-improve when you're confined. And most folks that are coming out of, incarceration and want to get back, they don't want to go back. The problem is for years and years, they lack the opportunity to be productive. That's changing a little bit now, particularly in industries like construction and manufacturing, where you're able to, you're able to talk about your past, the mistakes you've made, and it not affect your employment, because quite frankly, they don't have a choice anymore, because it's working with these folks, or it's not working, because there's just there's nobody else there behind that. Getting our young population, and what I found the most important, the reason why we really wanted to do the summer job program for our youth, is we understood that there's not always a lot of opportunity for 16, 17, and 18-year-olds to get a job. And you only learn about a job by being on the job. So all that, we call them soft skills, critical thinking, customer service, customer interface, all of those things that go with, that are just inherent skills that we have. I learned them, because I started working I was a lifeguard at 14, because I had to make money for myself. So I had to interact with people, and I had to understand what it meant to show up for work, to be respectful to my employer. 8 o'clock meant 8 o'clock, not 8:05.
Right.
All those things that we don't learn until we're in an environment that compels us to learn them, and that's being on the job. Those opportunities don't exist, particularly for our younger population that have some barriers, like socioeconomic, or they lack transportation.
Or they lack skills.
And they lack skills. Yeah.
If I'm a 16 or 17-year-old looking for a job, I'm going to be asked, like, what can you do? And unless it's some kind of a job that I can learn very quickly, I would imagine it'd be a challenge for an employer to hire me over someone else with a little bit of experience.
Absolutely. And we wanted to take that. We wanted to take that out of the equation in the best way we could.
Because you actually augment some of that? Or what do you actually do to help in that scenario? This is the classic minimum wage discussion.
So what we do is we work with youth, again, age 16 to 24. They're employees of CareerSource Tampa Bay. We have host site agreements with employers where they go on site, they learn about the job, they're productive. But we payroll them. We mitigate the risk for an employer, because we want the opportunity for our young population to learn about the value of work. Right. And you can't learn about the value of work if there's no opportunity for you to go to work. Even in good times, sub 3% unemployment. Right. That unemployment rate for your 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old population was 12 to 13%.
Huge.
So a massive part of our population that didn't get to enjoy a good economy. And, understanding data and what's coming in the future, it was critically important for us as a community and us as an organization to provide the opportunity so we can get our young population ready to work.
Yeah, it's actually good for the community. It's kind of like the whole mission. You mentioned Boys and Girls Club.
Absolutely.
It's such an incredible organization, what they do, because any young person that goes through that program gets the support. They get, people helping them with their homework, helping, mentor them. It's really an incredible support system. And you probably believe, but it's unbelievable how many productive members of society, and there's like the fabric of society needs people working.
It's amazing what I was able to take away from my $1 a year membership. I'll have things that I'll never leave, and quite frankly, that I instill in my son.
Yeah.
He doesn't, he's, by different circumstance, he doesn't go to the Boys and Girls Club, maybe because he doesn't have to, but we got to think about that. It's something that really, the lessons I learned there, I'll never forget, and they've made me who I am today. So, but not everybody has that opportunity for whatever reason, even something like being able to go to the club. So how do we help that?
Well, that's my question for you. What can we do for people who, like, I mean, Boys and Girls Club is an interesting organization because it's actually competitive to get in now.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
And so what can we do? Let's say, for example, you're someplace and you're looking for opportunities for perspective. What would you encourage people to do?
So from the job seeker side, so this is going to be an interesting answer. When I talk to, and I talk to a lot of folks that are on the road to either reemployment or changing industry, and their question is, well, how do I set myself apart? Mm-hmm. I always try to tell them it's not, don't think about it as you applying for that job. You walk in there and you be able to tell that employer, here's what I can offer you. Here's what I can offer you, and here's how I can help you help you in your business.
Yeah.
It's not give me a job. It's here's what I can
give you an ROI.
Yeah. Here's what I can give you in exchange for my employment. I don't care if you're 14 or you're 55. If somebody asks me for advice, that's always the first piece of advice I give everybody. If I'm an employer, and I'm an employer too. We have a few hundred people that we employ. I try not to ask it, but if
how many people do you employ?
We employ about 200 people.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about we serve. In any given year, we serve about 30,000 individuals, and we work with about 2,500 employers. So It's a busy shop. But it's something that, from the talent side, always be ready to talk about. How I'm going to be a net benefit to you as an employer, your company.
That's great advice.
When you tell them that, if you walk in there and you tell me that, I'm sold. You may not fit this job, but I'm going to find a place for you because that's what
right
I'm looking
attitude.
for. Absolutely. Yeah, attitude is very important. And if you come in, if you present yourself to an employer in that fashion, 99 times out of 100, they're going to find a place for you because that's not something that a lot of people do.
How important are assessments in placing employees these days?
Depends on who you ask. I think from a critical thinking standpoint, I think they can be important because particularly some jobs look for maybe not just a specific skill set, but a specific outlook on how you approach a task or a problem. 99% of the jobs you get still happen in the interview process. Some things may impede your progress, but if you get your foot in that door and you present well to the person to the company you're trying to catch on with, you're going to catch on with them. The interface from human being to human being will never lose its importance in that way. If the interview process is first, I'll never underscore the importance of being well prepared. And again, talking about how you become a value to the organization. At that point, if you don't fit the whatever assessment tool they use, it won't have no importance, but they're going to know who you are. Quite frankly, I'll tell you, it's how I got this job is I don't know how I did it, but I was confident, I prepared, I talked to the interview panel about what I could do differently and how I could be a benefit to this organization and this community. And I didn't do very well on my post-interview assessments, but they still chose me, and they chose me based on my interview. So I just,
your passion is palpable.
Yeah. And just as as an anecdotal story, it's always going to be the most important is how you present yourself to your potential employer. The assessments are important, but not near as important as what happens face to face.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your particular circumstance. What are some things that CareerSource is doing today that are new or that you've brought to the table that have made the organization better?
So I think the two big things. Number one is the Tampa Bay Summer Hires Program. We rebranded this year. This year used to be called the Summer Job Connection. It's not something we did as an organization. Quite frankly, in a county the size of 1.5 million people, it's not something that happened to scale in this county. So my first thought was A, why was that, and B, how quickly can we stand this up? I think it was February or March where I kind of identified that this is where I want to go. And my team's thinking, great, we're going to start planning for next year. I said, no, we're going to do this year. It's going to be difficult and it's going to be a little bit messy. But think about the lives we're going to impact. So we were able to impact about 650 young people our first year. Where right now our funding is a little bit monolithical or singular. We're funded through federal funds for this. But this is our 4th year doing it. So next year really starts the process of us growing the program organically with private industry, not just as a partner in placing you somewhere, but becoming financial partners as well, because we've seen the success, and it's so much easier for me to go to an organization or an employer with data to say, here's the impact it's had on, since we started, we helped about 2,800 youth. Here's what these 2,800 youth have learned, are doing, how they matriculated in school.
What kind of jobs are we talking about?
We're talking about, everything across. There's no industry that doesn't partake. We had folks that were learning how to be construction surveyors. We had folks that were working for, IT. The technology industry is a huge supporter.
It's a growing segment in this region.
It is. Time. So they're all for it because, as you're right, it's growing and it's growing rapidly. So they're going to need, that talent pool to be able to continue to grow. It's everything from entry level all the way. It's a good part of it is entry level because, about 80% of these kids, it's the first job they've ever had.
Yeah.
So it's, employers understand that there's this isn't the quote unquote optimal employee that we're getting. This is somebody that we may make an impact on and may have massive returns for us 5 or 6 years or 3 years down the road because, we give them the opportunity to the world. We've introduced them to the world of work. They're going to go back. They're going to learn some stuff. And in a few years, they might come back and work for us and they might be a rock star.
That's a win-win.
Absolutely. And so that, and then really looking at creating more partnerships specifically for direct delivery of services.
Okay.
We used to be, there's CareerSource Tampa Bay through the federal structure. We're all called, we're technically called a workforce development board.
Okay.
That's our moniker through the federal legislation. We've got about 14 unique and identifiable responsibilities. A lot of them are being, having fiduciary oversight, really being the strategic entity on linking partners together, linking employers with services, linking educators with employers and community partners to make sure that, those are the 3 key pieces that you need in order to grow a pretty robust talent system. The community partners have access to the talent, right? That's really the talent development side. The educators are the training side, the employers, that's really, that's the end-line opportunity. Our job is to sit in the middle of that, convene that, and make sure everybody's interconnected. And then we're the funding piece to that too. So what we've done is separate our duties a little bit to where we work with more vendors and more community partners on the direct delivery of services. Yeah. And we're really focused on the strategic direction of the organization so we can continue to bring partners in. And we can continue to bring educators in and continue to bring employers in. There are some services that we still provide direct services for, youth being one of them. Okay. But a lot of our job seeker services, we work with partners because, and quite frankly, they do a much better job than we did as that direct service provider.
Okay.
We really looked at optimizing the model a little bit more than it was before. Hard to be all things to all people when you're we call it, I'm sure you've heard the expression down in the weeds a little bit. It's when you're in the weeds a little bit, it's hard to get back up into that viewpoint, maybe that 10 to 20,000 vote viewpoint, making sure that all the pieces are connected. But
if you're facilitating that, that's your role.
That is our role, 100%. And that's what we need to focus on if we want to, we're the organization that, in my opinion, is responsible for building this talent pipeline development structure. So we have to make sure that we have a full view of the playing field and making sure that all the partners are involved. The right resources are attached to the right partner. The right employer is attached to the right partner, educator, and resources. And that is it's a massive job in and of itself. And then throw another layer of having to be the direct interface with the job seeker from the career coach perspective. It's a lot. So, you've got partners and vendors that already do this, that do a fantastic job. So why don't we enter into a contractual agreement with them to do it and let us focus on, what we're good at.
Well, where can organizations get connected with you guys and follow what you're doing there?
So first is website, www.CareerSource Tampa Bay. We have a pretty active social media presence, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. That's typically, that's mostly our younger talent contingent usually finds us on social media. Website, you're going to ask me for a phone number, but I'm not going to remember it.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about the phone number, but the website's plenty good.
Yeah. And
social media.
Yeah. And it'll be, you go on the website, there'll be a specific button if you're a job seeker, a specific button to click if you're an employer. And then it kind of walks you through not just our complement of services, but we'll give you the right people to contact as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to definitely check you guys out and see if there's anything that you can do to help augment our workforce.
I know you talked about, utilizing the services before, and we'd certainly like to have you back as a customer. So,
yeah.
A bit of a different era, a bit of a different focus and scope there. So we're hoping that that will continue. Again, I talked a little bit more.
Well, I think it's great, some of the changes you mentioned. So I'm definitely looking forward to coming back.
We work with 2,500 employers. We want to work with everybody. So we got a long way to go. So don't hesitate. Anybody listening to give us a call, go to our website, use our services. We're gonna do our level best to help.
Just knock on the door and ask a question. You'll
come on in.
Point us in the right direction.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So we'll come find you, and you can find this podcast anywhere where podcasts are found. You can follow us on bakemorepies.com social media, as well as the Law of Relevancy social media and the website. John, thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate being my guest.
I appreciate it, of course. Thank you for the opportunity.
You got it, man.